I remember being in like server rooms at Fujitsu, being really frustrated that no one would ever see the light of day of what I was doing. Like really demotivated by the whole thing. Actually, that's kind of like a big reason why I left home.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Still, I'm old enough to be in from that school. I thought that you do so many things in one go at the early part of your career. You kind of muscle it through, and then you kind of come on the other side and you got lots of war scars. And it's a mutually beneficial thing.
Yes.
A lot of people don't think about that, right? You stick around. Don't think about the title. Don't think about the powerful. Move on to one. Having a consistent narrative on a CV. You know, one of the things like I've been grappling with recently is like, what exactly am I though? A solution architect or enterprise architect or whatever at one point. You were delivery manager at one point. You know, he was in analytics at some point. It's like, what are you, dog? Right? So, and it's tricky, yeah?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode from Careers Talks. Today I have Dwayne. Dwayne, it's a pleasure to have you. You've started in Barbados as a systems engineer in very technical roles. Slowly, you've built your career where you moved to the UK. You've worked across several industries and fields in analytics, in EE, BBC, in cloud, in Adobe and Amazon, and also transformation in Carrefour. So in very different settings and firms, and you've even ventured into entrepreneurship. So I think today there's a lot to touch on in terms of your learnings across these different experiences. How is innovation developing? And if you look back on all of this, what's your the key lessons, and what are you, or what do you want to pivot to next? So I'm super excited for our conversation today.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it. Yeah.
So you've worked in very technical roles at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then you've worked in analytics and digital solutions. Then you went into the services side of things, where you still worked in analytics and digital solutions, but on the consulting side. And now you're in AWS as a principal AI and data transformation. So if we want to explain to someone, what do you do now in practical terms?
Yeah.
And what did you do in these different pillars, like, or in these different positions you were in? Can you walk us through in like practical terms? XYZ would be my key deliverables in this position, and in consulting, XYZ were.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, so real fast. So engineering, physical servers, interacts, clustering. Most of your time is spent solving problems because something that was up for 15 years went down and no one really knows how. And you're by yourself in a really cool server, probably for a day, right? Right, that's what that's was about.
Not the most enjoyable, for sure. Slowly we'll get better now.
Being an analyst is actually really cool, actually, to be fair. You've got to take like the creative side of your mind that you think about business, but I think at that time I didn't really have a lot of business experience, so I really struggled with that bit. But my technical side was fantastic because I knew a lot of JavaScript and a lot of Perl and stuff like that, so I could get like data out easily, right? I'm merging those two things, and then presenting it well in a way that's compelling. I got to be creative, you know. I got to, you know, help Disney to optimize a particular journey and help more families to go on trips and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. To let my outputs were those pieces of work, right? I think allowed me to blend creative and tech, right? You know, I tried to kind of go up the kind of seniority ladder in that space for a bit, and it got me into things like personalization and, you know, recommended engines, and I got really into recommended engines, Dwayne, let me tell you. You know, and you know that got me into Accenture and delivering like you know big data
Solution.
Programs at the time, but that is about understanding how to price pieces of work, right? Create like the kind of big picture, break it down into smaller components, create backlogs, assemble teams, understand pricing for customers that's compelling, presenting options and, proposals and what's not, keeping a team alive because in that sense you got this tricky thing of the resources don't really belong to you until they're in a project, right? So you've got to keep these little different people busy, and so you can then kind of put them into teams when customers are ready for you. You're really pressured about chargeability and utilization, but ultimately you do some really cool stuff over and over and over because you get better at it, right? So that first thing is painful, and you trip up over a lot of stuff. You get yourself in a little bit of trouble, but by the time you do your third or fourth gig, it's like right, and you can concentrate more on convincing customers to do the right thing. I was never one of those like salesy type people, right? So I just kind of keep to the
genuine delivery of
that's always
execution.
Did my thing. Yeah. Carrefour was more about kind of like I got to really take that Accenture way of thinking and just put it on steroids. So I was like, at Carrefour, you got a cycle. You start the year, this is what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna do these 4 things, right? And everybody goes, yeah, you're gonna do these 4 things, right? And then you go, okay, good. Now we're gonna stand on your team and get everybody in other teams that you need to work with bought into the idea as well, because they've got to change their backlogs to align with yours in order to deliver the thing. And then you spend the rest of the year doing that. Hopefully you get to autumn with at least maybe 2 things delivered.
And there it was mainly focused on digitization, your job, or
different recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's about getting recommendations, product suggestions baked into lots of stuff, emails, loyalty, offers, online, everything, right? But those are different teams though. Nothing to do with yours, right? You've just got like a band of marionette and
always implemented.
Exactly, right? And then you'd be facing off into like, people from whole other companies that run like ETL frameworks and stuff like that, and getting them to convincing them, hey man, this is the right thing to do, so it's a fun gig. Actually, you know what? AWS is a whole other beast. You are nowhere near any of those people, right? You're talking to a lot more senior audience, and they have the ability to mobilize people to come together, right? So a lot of the workshops that I do right now, the reason why I believe in them so much, and I think that they're so powerful, and you really get 2 groups of people, maybe 3 groups of people sometimes, that they hardly ever speak to each other, right? And then they go, that's the problem? That's the problem. Yeah. And then they go, okay, cool. We now know the problem. We now know how to solve it. We've come up with the problems, the solutions together.
Yes.
I get to help them to level up.
Yes.
And then go, that's the big picture, right? And now you've got the big picture. This is how it looks.
Yeah.
This is how it's going to look in people's hands.
Yes.
This is the first slice that you deliver from that. Why? Because if you deliver B, P, and Z, the sponsors for that are going to really like the output. The customers and the way you impact customers are going to be very valuable. And then that makes it, and hopefully you got the right amount of nuggets and piping that allow you to unlock A, E, and I. And then the cycle continues like that.
And there was also a bit in your career where you worked hands-on cloud, right, in Adobe. Like their principal.
Yeah. I mean, Adobe was more consulting as well.
Okay.
Well, there was more like an extension of what I was doing at Accenture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cloud focused.
But more, cloud. Yeah, more kind of. With Adobe, it's creative cloud, right? So it's like, marketing cloud rather. So all the stuff that I was doing at Carrefour, all the stuff that I was doing on my latter stages of Accenture, and all the marketing automation stuff, it was about going into customer environments, helping them and their build teams, and helping them to almost piece together where they should apply, how they should phase the actual delivery, that kind of thing.
It's interesting because you've said you've done this more heavy hands-on projects in your early days, like designing digital services, the websites, and you slowly started going into that consulting path and then into the cloud. So can you walk us through the most or like these transformative pivots that you've made in your career and how they led to where you are now with AWS?
So I'll probably showing my age right here. So Super Mario Brothers.
Uh-huh.
You sometimes you hit the question mark and you get a raccoon suit or a feather and you could fly. And that feather or that raccoon suit or whatever, it helps you to do a much more difficult level.
Mm-hmm.
That happens in real life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could always kind of point back to the thing.
Yes.
Because I got the gig at Accenture because the thing that I built at EE was this BI tool that I wanted everyone to use that sat on some AWS infrastructure and uses Tableau for people to see the visual thing. That people didn't understand the infrastructure or anything like that. But then that got me into cloud and how it could be architected and everything like that. And then that thing led me into a different bit. So
Yes.
it's almost like that was my suit, my raccoon suit,
Yes.
my feather that linked me into this. And then when it was at Accenture, there's a gig that I did at Channel 4 that just, I would say that changed the game in a big way, because it was for the first time I realized, Dwayne, you got to paint the vision for what these people need to do in the future.
Yes.
You just can't do it. Like, you got to make it real. Like, you got to make it about in somebody's physical hand in the outside world, and then draw that picture from that big cloud all the way down to the thing that you need to build. So, and that way you can give this big vision to, Sanjeevan Bala, who was like the kind of like sponsor at the time. And then, he could have a conversation around sponsorship. And then you give this bit here about the detailed bits to like this delivery team.
Yes.
And they would know how to build it, and they'll be saying the same thing.
Yes.
And you just be like the orchestrator between the two groups. Right. And not only that, they have clarity so they could understand what they need to do.
Yes.
And they can it'll be easy for them to commit to it.
Yes.
And it was the first thing that I like bulb went off. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Right. And they structured the entire piece of work around that.
Yes.
And
I'm assuming you wouldn't have been good at drawing that strategy map if you haven't went through it first. Like you said, you've built that tool in EE from the ground up. So you know what it really takes to implement something within an organization and how it links to their different operational arms and processes. So if I'm a young person now starting my career in digital consulting, or even I have the technical capabilities in your case, how do I decide what to start with first? Is it always good to get that bird eye view and work with consulting firms, implement the strategies, and then go into more technical roles and know and actually execute end to end? Or was it better in your case that you started with the execution and then went to that consulting aspect? So maybe walk us through the learnings from both. I know there's no like one right way of doing it, but what were your learnings from each, like the execution part? Because you've also done it in different spaces, like big corporate firms, smaller digital services, and you've even done it in a startup mode where you've applied digital services to companies or like clients. So what were the learnings from each? Maybe that would help the audience know what's best to start with in terms of their career.
So I would say it ultimately, for the first question about where to start,
yes,
I think you should think about it through the lens of what are your strengths. There's this thing, this Gallup Strengths Finder thing that I don't know if it still exists.
The person, like, it's a test or that you do, and
you're good. And there's these 34 things.
Yes,
I found that so helpful, right? And you kind of you get a sense, you kind of know, but it's good to see it laid out like that. And I kind of did it, and when we were at Accenture, and so you got these 10 things, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. And obviously, I was midway through, it was a long time of work. I was working at that point in time. But if you got the opportunity to find out that earlier on, right, then it might kind of shape your decision of whether you go kind of like top down or whether you go bottom up.
Yeah,
I would argue that because of the way my mind works, in that I think naturally think strategically. I just ultimately want to get people to go. Let's call it activator mindset, right? So I found it really frustrating working through, working from the bottom up. I remember being in like server rooms at Fujitsu being really frustrated that no one would ever see the light of day what I was doing. Like really demotivated by the whole thing. Actually, that's kind of like a big reason why I left home.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So, and you kind of work your way up slowly. And then, you could convince people that they could give you a chance at doing this thing, and people get a chance to see how you work. Oh, this guy? Right? I can't speak for starting going top down.
Yes.
I imagine if you did do that, you probably won't go too far down.
Yeah, you'll struggle a bit.
Yeah. So I think there's goodness in working your way up, just seeing how things were, going through the pain. Because I tell you this, a lot of that pain, that is my magic dust in what I do today, I think. I like to be able to tell a customer, look, you might want to have a think about how you do X, Y, Z, because this is what happened to me in a previous life, right? This is what I considered when, I was in your position.
Yes.
I feel really good to be able to pass.
Yes.
And they might say, you don't need to teach me how to suck eggs. Fine, but at least...
I told you, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I gave you the heads up, basically.
Yeah,
no, makes sense. I think I see a lot of young people not wanting to go through that pain. And I was one of these young people, like, I don't want to be doing this. It's so mundane, regardless of whether it's being in a technical role, or I think this applies across several industries.
Yeah.
But slowly, as time evolves, I'm seeing this trend of youth wanting to, retire by 30 or get, so I think what we can learn from your journey is go through these early phases of pain, and you might do mundane things and things that you're not, but it will take you places where you can tell the person or your client, by the way, I've built this bottoms up. This is how I recommend we build this digital services tool for your teams, and this is why I recommend building it in XYZ ways. So I think there's a lot to learn from there, as in you might in your early career not be in roles that you're super keen on, passionate about, but it will lead you to places where people reach out to you as an advisor. So I think that's a key takeaway from these early phases you went through.
I do admire a lot of the kind of younger people that I work with. There's a gentleman I used to work with, AWS, and his work ethic is completely different from mine, because I still am old enough to been from that school. I thought that you do so many things in one go at the early part of your career, and you kind of muscle it through, and then you kind of come out on the other side and you got lots of war scars. And I think Artemis is more of a kind of mindset where he goes, actually, you know what? I want to do fewer things really well from now. And I want that, maintain that balance right throughout. And I think to be brave enough earlier in your career to make a decision like that and tell me that, I really admired him, for that. So, and I see a lot of people his age doing that and taking that approach to work.
Yes.
And you get to tell the same stories. That's the thing that no one tells you, right? Because if you go back, we go back to when we were more kind of industrial, had more industrial shaped economies. You were in a factory and you work from X to boop, right? And you do the day's work, and then you go up the ladder, and it's a little slower, but you still have lots of stories to tell.
Yes,
that are based on your experience and they're real. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it doesn't erode that.
100%. You've been in very different environments, as in worked with giants like Adobe, BT, EE. You've also decided to build your own startup or digital services company. You pivoted back to AWS. If someone's watching and want to understand, how do I take career decisions? What was your own framework when you took these decisions, and anything that you would have done differently, for example?
Man, it was a shambles, man. I would, as you slow down, as you become more experienced and you slow down, you have more time to think about what you're actually doing, right? Because you're flying the plane as you build it, right? And so you can actually hold your head up and realize, oh, this was the wing. This is the wing all along. Oh, okay. I hope there's another wing, right? It was really shambolic. What I did have going for me, and where I was really lucky, is that I always had an idea that I like to create things that people use, right? And I've treated my career like Play-Doh, like plasticine, and I kind of mold it into, okay, I'm going to be a house for right now. Okay, I'm going to be a car because I had a little couple of wheels on there, right? And so I've always kind of shaped it into the thing. But the consistent thread is that, oh, people are going to take a thing that I created, and they go, that thing that Dwayne Brown created, that was really helpful. And they meet me like 2 years later and they go, Dwayne, they're still using that thing, right? Right? I really feel good when that happens, right? So if you're in a gig that allows you to bring your authentic self,
yes,
well, that gets you into a question of what is my authentic self. So find out what your authentic self is.
Most detriment,
right? But if you're in a gig that allows you to bring your authentic self to it, bring the both sides, and it's a mutually beneficial thing.
Yes,
a lot of people don't think about that, right? Then you stick around. Don't think about the title. Don't think about whether you're powerful. Move on to one. Well, depending on your personality. I'm just not that kind of person, right? But just think about, what are your outputs? Who are you working with? Is it mutually beneficial? Right? I am a painter, and I happen to be working for this particular company at this slithering time, right? I don't belong to that company. The things that come out of my brain, as soon as I save it to this laptop, it becomes their intellectual property, right? So I got a real clear idea in my head around, and it's a tricky line, but there is a line of when something stops being Dwayne Brown's and becomes Amazonian or Accenture's or Carrefour's or BT's, and because I create a lot of stuff, I create whether it be packs, whether it be frameworks of people work, or templates and you could use or whatever, right? So I have to think about that.
Yes.
Right. And if ever I can't do that, then I know it's not for me. Like I actually left BT. I didn't understand it at the time, but I understand it well enough to tell you no. Where my job was to create anything. My job was more of a facilitator of a company that was too big to have the business speak to its technology stakeholders. So it needed a whole other department of people to be the interface between the two people. I wasn't creating a damn thing, right? So it didn't sit well with me. I didn't understand that at the time, but to go over every day, I just felt it demotivating. It's like, and I would go, and I create a thing, and they go, no one would see the need for it, because that thing you just created, that's meant to come from the business, not from you. You don't have to do any of that and give us any guidance on that. They'll figure it out themselves. And it's like, really?
That didn't make sense.
That really penny drop, and they felt really uncomfortable every day, right? So I say all that to say is, one, it was shambolic. I found out different little breadcrumbs, and I got different, Mario mushrooms and they made alone, and that shaped my decision process. Those are the things that I've kind of landed on now.
Yeah, no, like Harry said, also think of where you are in your journey and what you're giving, but also where the company is in their journey, and that alignment is very important.
And sometimes we miss
thrive, right? If there's a mismatch, you're either not helping the company or you're not helping yourself. So it's not a long-term solution for your career. Touching a bit on when you started also venturing into entrepreneurship and offering these services to your own clients, because it's completely different. There's no safety guards, right? It's you and the client, and you're building for the client.
Yeah, boy.
How was that, and what did you learn from these experiences?
So I went in that road a couple of times.
Yes.
Many times out of frustration, right? Because I felt like the kind of main track that I was on didn't allow me to progress in ways that I would like, and I got frustrated and I decided to create my own thing. I am in a different place now, right? But the you because the buck stops with you, it's a good feeling. You can you create the end to end. You could take a lot of the ideas that probably wouldn't get implemented or considered in this track, and you can really see them through and get feedback on them. And some of them were good and some of them weren't, right? And that feels good.
Yeah.
And I keep this alive at all, like by all means, this has to stay alive. So if you know me from, back when I lived home, there was a version of Verso Labs back then. There was Tanville, there was all sorts of stuff. I always keep it alive because it has many functions. One is a way of me giving back. One is a way of me making sure that, I'm working with at least a company where they can get the best of what I'm learning in this world. And they could, and if, I can maybe mentor someone who wants to get into, working in digital, then that's an added bonus. And the many people that I got a chance to, work with, and they now got their own careers. So I feel good doing that.
Yes.
You are right though. It's also the way that I've learned my hardest lessons, boy. Because when you take risks, but you're running a professional services business at its core, right? And the lead times are really long, right? How you allocate capital, so you need to have enough capital at hand to see yourself through a project, a program of work, and the cash flow needs to be legit. The resource profile needs to be legit. There's so many things in balancing acts that you need to think about. So I got stung a lot.
It's a different world.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I know my wife would be like, I think she's been really supportive throughout the entire thing, and because Federica isn't as much of a risk taker as I am, but she understands that it's an outlet for me, and I think now she knows how to guide me in such a way that I'm going to make better decisions, and so to where I am now with that is, I think, it's the right balance. It's not kind of creative outlet for me, right? I've built long-standing relationships with the customers that we've got for a really long time, so over 5 years. And then the things that we create, I can now pull, different smaller companies or freelancers that I build a relationship over time and connect them with these people. So, I like how it's going now. It's more organic, it's not a big kind of fanfare or anything. And, it just takes over. I am not as involved, in these days, but I do get a sense of like the creative things that we do. So if there's like mock-ups to an app that we create, I want to get involved because I want to see the thing, what it is our greatest. And it helps me with this as well, but
yes,
right, because it keeps me closer. Because in this gig, I don't get to see things through.
Yes,
right. We're in a function of sales.
Yes,
so you don't get to see things. So being able to kind of peep over and be like, oh, that's what you would do to build an app these days. Oh, that's how you would now design this particular function. I get it. I get to speak directly with the practitioners. Yeah.
Interesting that you see the end-to-end, but from two different scopes, like your current job and that other like consultancy firm that you have. Has that in a way changed how you perceive fulfillment? Like, corporate versus you having the choice to fully say, I want to dedicate 100% to this other venue. Like, how did that, or what thoughts did you have about fulfillment and your career when you were thinking of these two choices?
Well, because the first ingredient that we talked about before was it must be usable by someone. It's valued, and I could look back at it and said, yeah, I had a hand in that thing, or that specific little mark that I left. That was, but there's another element to it, whereas okay, well, in your day to day, in the way you deliver the work, how you deliver the work, how you spread your time, you need to think about that as well. I think, again, with that experience, I think I now have a much better understanding of how I like to work and what's better for me. And it informs my run rate, and it helps me to work out, let me put it a different way. So many other things are better as a result of me just slowing right down. Right? So it's like, all right, just I don't want to be cryptic. If I could do 1 or 2 things a week, do them really well, right? And someone sees it and goes, oh yeah, Dwayne did that for sure, right? That's what I like, right? And there's just so many things that opens you up to help someone do the same thing. That helps you to be what I call chess man standing, because some people, they work more erratic and they have a faster run rate than you. And chess man standing means that you're the person standing above 2 other people playing chess. So you can see 2-3 steps ahead where they're playing and they're under pressure. They can't see the thing. So it allows me to play that role with many other people.
Yes.
I got a kick from being able to help. Yeah, you might want to think about. So I get a lot more fulfillment. Is just beyond just, did I do the workshop? Did I run the workshop? And did I deliver the thing for the customer? I've always done that. I've always made sure that, I put 100%, 150% into the outcomes of a customer. Can they use it, etc. But now I get to think about all of these things to the left and right of that, about me personally, what it means for me, and the impact I have on my colleagues, on people around me. So yeah, it's a bit more 3-dimensional now.
Yes, yeah, I know. It's interesting to have always these dimensions also interacting with one another, because you give to that, and then you learn from it and you apply it there. If you're fully in one of them, might not be the same knowledge cycle, or like that learning cycle that you have. So it's interesting, because I see a lot of people just wanting to build businesses, and purely solely focus on that. But it's interesting to see that there's people who are in industry, have their own also clients, and they're balancing between both. So you get that sense of fulfillment, but you're also doing it at a pace that allows you to give both and learn from both and open channels between both. So
yeah,
that's very, very interesting.
So the disadvantages are, so you don't have a clear narrative, because you're going into things. I go into things for the experience of how it can impact, customers, etc. At that time, gives me a kick. But I paid less attention to having a consistent narrative on a CV. So like, one of the things like I've been grappling with recently is like, what exactly am I though? Right? You were a solution architect or enterprise architect or whatever at one point. You were a delivery manager at one point. You was in analytics at some point. It's like, what are you, dog? Right? So and it's tricky, yeah, because when you gotta remember, I'll tell you where this all came from. If I got laid off tomorrow, for whatever reason, possibility, right? Then you very quickly need to think about it, because you need to think about, how do people buy you? What are they buying from you, right? Then how do you make yourself compelling to the market and all that kind of stuff. So I've always focused on the experience I want day to day, which is good. Arguably, I hope I'll be 80 something and have look back fondly, but from a what it means for a consistent narrative career wise, then it looks really patchy.
It's interesting, like you saying this, because I think we've reached a point where if it's not patchy, then it looks weird. I think it's the other way around. I don't know. I feel the way companies are evolving, industries are evolving, it's tough to have that like clear narrative of, yes, I started as an analyst and now I'm senior analyst and then PM. I feel it's natural to have these career paths as well, where yes, I started a very technical roles, and then I moved a bit into building these solutions within companies, and then consulting. So I think you can also make that narrative or path out of it, and then pivot towards what you want. If anything, you're in a position of leverage because you've tried these and you've been deep into each. So maybe you're in a position where you can. Do you think you're in a position where you can say, you know what, throughout all of these things I've done, this is where I want to double down, or this is what I go back to? Or is there challenges doing that, do you think?
And I did get to that, by the way. I did land on that. Let me tell you how I really feel, Dwayne. I think that while there are people that have an appreciation for that, I think that at the end of the day, the world we live in now is all automated and AI more increasingly so.
Mm-hmm.
So, it helps you to have that narrative. Is it always in data?
Mm-hmm.
Then you'll get easy for you to get data gigs. Was it always in digital? Well, it was easy for you to get, data science, so on and so forth. So to at least have a narrative that stitches together well, because the it's not a person looking at your CV, it's a tool looking at the CV, and those are the gatekeepers, right? So because thousands of people apply to a thing each day, right? So you got to just think about that, and not only looking or anything like that, but that's the reality.
Yes,
right. So if I said to my sister the other day, she's in sales. All right, if you're 60 years old and you're looking back, is the thing that you're selling now going to be the thing that you want to be known for then, right? So you landed that you are in sales and you've got all of the right skills and talent for sales, but now think about what you're selling, right? And then make sure that the narrative, land on that narrative, and that's a nice straight line. And whether you go from account executive, business development into, client directorships. And you get my point, right? Fine. But at least is it fluorescent bulbs? Right? It is 60 years of fluorescent bulbs, right?
That would be interesting. You're now in an interesting position, right? You've had these numerous experiences in digital transformation, cloud and digital implementation, and we're at a point where technology is really transforming industries at a very rapid pace, and you have these young professionals also flowing into the market, building these technologies, and then you have seasoned professionals like yourself still impacting the market. So where do you think you'll go from here? Like, if you look back at your career and you want to define, okay, this is what I've done, this is what I pivot to. Yeah, how are you thinking about that?
Well, in the end, I want to end up in a lecture hall somewhere at 60. So it's
you do or you don't want to?
I definitely do.
You do?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, 100%. So I want to be telling stories or conveying concepts through stories. So just a collection of different stories, like being, inspired by like people in the past, like Hillary Beckles in the West Indies and stuff like that. And that's how he does a really good job on that. I think I've landed on, I am a strategist. First, that's a thing. And I don't feel confident that that's a thing. And it has, much like if you're a painter and you come with paint and brushes, they're also tools and outputs and like a structured approach to being a strategist as well, right? And it took me a long time to piece together and understand it, and it took me some research and some thinking and observing different people. And I think that if you're an experienced person and you're meeting some person who is less experience but is super smart, right? Well, one, if I think about myself, back then I felt like I could conquer the world with my smarts. And maybe a little bit naive there, right? And then probably many younger people who got that same mindset as well, right? The world seems like it's completely up for them to change through smarts. I've learned though that it's the falling down and the burns that really make you a lot more impactful in what you do. So, if I take my current role, my experience, and you partner me with someone like that, you make magic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think
Mm-hmm.
back to like, you know, working with our RMS at Accenture, and our man is super smart. He knew about, you know, all of these different frameworks and everything like that. And I was like, okay, well, if we deliver this slice, this two stakeholders will be happy and they'll sponsor another slice.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to think about like the sequencing of the politics. And he got to think about, well, how you're going to solve scaling horizontally versus vertically. And if you pair two together, then you make magic.
Yes. Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
So I think that you should, sometimes you get lucky like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you don't have that luck, then try to find a partner, find people or ways that you could, you know, that you could kind of distill knowledge in that sense
Partnership,
and make that
yes.
exchange. Yeah.
And if you look back, or like you see now 23-year-old Dwayne, you know, going into the job market, is there a key lesson or something that you would want to tell him, or like, hey, be aware of this, you know, like
There's a gentleman I met, Ralph Rivera, that told me that I needed to, you know, make people aware, understand, agree, and take action. I would give my younger self that framework much earlier on.
Is it make them aware?
Make them aware, help them to understand.
Okay.
That's where clarity comes in, structure comes in, right? Help them to agree.
Yes.
You gotta make it compelling, create a vision for it, right? Help them to take action. You need to break it down in such a way that it seems achievable and it contributes to the broader vision, right? And I would give 21-year-old Dwayne that framework. But then it kind of gets you into thinking you could apply it to all different stages, right? All different stages, but it keeps you grounded. And if you look back at it, it pulls you out from the code, or, you know, if you're too high up, it brings you down to what is actionable, right? Or if you're too focused in data, it pulls you out and gets you into experiences, and if you're too in experiences, it pulls you into systems, right? Because you need to, ultimately you're triangulating to find the right balance, because you've got different stakeholders and you want them to take action.
Yes.
So yeah, I would give him that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because looking back at your journey, sometimes you're a lot focused on the making them aware part, or sometimes you're very focused on making them understand, or maybe in consulting you want to convince them about the vision. So it's interesting if you had that, but it's because you also went through all.
Yeah.
So now in a position, you know, the end to end, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And how do you see all this AI automation wave impacting that, right? Because yes, there's automation, but there's firms that are a few steps back, right? So they need someone to just give them the overview of, okay, this is how the technology works. This is how you're doing. So how do you think that framework is being impacted by these technologies, if that makes sense?
The reason I'm laughing is that you touch on a question that has been coming up pretty often recently. Pure coincidence. You're right. So I think the businesses are whole sectors that have missed like that previous digital wave, right? I know they're like, well, we definitely got to do something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. And for me, I think if they have a partner, could be a person, could be a company, that can help them to do like value detection, I call it truffle pigs, right? Then, you know, just unearthing the different bits of value that's buried, and just helping them to kind of like piece together like how they structure it, how they apply the technology to those different things. They got a real opportunity, man.
Yes.
It's more than just like digital transformation in that sense. You know, they could really completely change the way that they run that operation. It could be fewer people, they could be more efficient, whatever.
Yes.
But it's a net new thing.
Yeah, no, there's a big wave and people are jumping into it, but maybe, let's use automation for this, but how does this connect to all your operational mechanisms? I think that's a bit where businesses need help, and maybe where people like you can, okay, this is the bird eye view. These are your different operational mechanisms. You're only using AI, for example, here.
Yeah.
Let's do this and this and that, where they start talking to each other. And I think this is where a lot of businesses might need support, or or that strategic view, you know, like.
I agree, and I know we got close, but I agree, and the prospect of like all the work that I see that could be done, that gets me really excited. When I go to like Germany and go to like a manufacturer, and I see that they can the things that they're grappling with, and I can see all the different ways they know doors and they know warranties and they know tires, and it's like we really want to get into, you know, helping them or connecting them with someone that like yourself that really knows the tech, and you go, oh yeah. Know that you've explained the problem with that warranty and how it would help you to create a better door. Then I could go and apply this AI model to that thing, and I kind of connect you to it. Right? But the first though, you got to start with, in the grand scheme of the business, where are all the red dots?
Yes.
Right. That's the first thing you got to do. So that's that pattern detection.
Yes. No. 100%. What makes Dwayne fulfilled or happy? So when you work or looking back at your career and job, like when do you say like, okay, yeah, if I do this, or while I do this, I'm a happy person, I feel fulfilled?
If I'm creating something that's actually going to make an impact on the person, it doesn't have to be a customer, right? When people go, that thing that Dwayne did, I use it every day. I feel good about that. They don't even need to tell me it directly. I just need to overhear it. Or I come back 2 years later and be, hey man, that thing that you made all them years back, you still use that, yeah. I feel like that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Impact.
That's the thing.
Yes. Dwayne, I really want to thank you for your time. This was a very insightful conversation. I really appreciate it. And we'll publish this on YouTube and all other platforms. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.